All right. That should be working now. It had the correct thing selected.
Wait, is that correct? Cody Spacebook, did you mean that? Or was it? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, that seems like, I think that's a good name for it,
It is.
really.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it makes me want to check this other thing too, though. Like, just going to toggle all of these and make sure. You know, technology is amazing. It's amazing. Um,
Except when it doesn't work.
except when it doesn't work. But it also, I feel like it could be a lot. We have a lot of room to grow. Anyways, I was saying, like, they know when our internet is, they can see it on their end. So, like, if they notice a pattern of things not going right, like, be proactive and send me a message or call me and say, hey, we're going to send somebody out
Yeah.
because you've been having internet problems. And that would surprise the crud out. I would be like, oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I would pay extra money for that level of service.
Yeah.
And then, like, these exercise machines have a lot of electronics built into them, and certainly, like, it's not beyond the scope of our technological ability to have diagnostic, like, we have that for vehicles, like, there are
Mm-hmm.
diagnostic components in vehicles. And so, like, it could send a message to the manufacturer and say, hey, this is, and that would be great data too, because, like, then they could say, oh yeah, on um, this particular exercise machine, we seem to be experiencing this same problem over and
Mm-hmm.
over again.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they only get that when
When
people
people
are
call,
calling in.
which is not as consistent. What if you developed that technology?
No, the technology is already there. It's just not being used.
Yeah.
And I
What
think
if you were the person who made it become used?
maybe it would be like a customer support revolution, because I can think of only a couple of examples of customer service experiences that were really great,
Yeah.
that spoke well of the company, that didn't make me that didn't give me the impression that customer service was an afterthought. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I guess we have to have customer service. Like at Podia, this is a Podia sponsored video. No,
Podia
I'm just
plug.
kidding. At Podia, the customer service team, like, there are rock stars, and that's like, we pour a lot of resources into customer service, and it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
one of, like, it's a badge of honor to be able to say, yeah, like, we really care about customer service.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, is it just that there's not enough financial upside to,
I think it's kind of like when companies cut communications departments because they think that they're not as necessary. And I've been a part of many communications departments that have just gotten cut,
mm-hmm,
because I mean, it's just, it's not a, they're not the people bringing in money,
yeah,
except in a peripheral way. And that's kind of how customer service works too.
I guess.
It's all about the bottom line, but it's got to be a direct line to the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad. That's Rachel's business philosophy.
We should talk about that sometime. Customer service. I'm writing it down. Okay. Well, I want to say hi to the folks in the chat real quick. Um, Cody, thank you for
Yeah.
letting us know something was up. I actually, I should be able to see it. It's obvious when I actually notice it, but I need to actually look for that, um,
uh,
to know whether or not audio is actually coming through. Very good to see you. Sounded like I said very good to see you.
yeah.
Vera, good to see you. Happy Friday. Friday.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Friday
I
is
like
my favorite.
I like these nicknames. We got Spacebook, and we're calling it Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Friday's like the funnest day of the week for us, right?
Yeah.
Like it's an easy meal day. We get to watch our shows.
Mm-hmm.
We get to do this podcast.
Yeah.
So I'll make this announcement right here and then we'll jump into the show. But we've been talking about how we wanted to break this show up into seasons and that we were going to be taking a break soon, doing a little bit of catching up. And then, I want to dig into that, what Cody just shared. Anyways, doing a little bit of catching up and planning for the next season, which we're going to do over the fall. And
Not like the whole fall.
No, not the whole fall. So I went ahead and made an executive decision. I hope you don't mind. But
Okay.
we did talk about today, this episode being our last live stream of this season. So that means that today is the last Friday until we pick up recording again.
So when do we pick up recording again?
So we are going to pick up recording again on October 7th. That's
Okay.
not a long break. We'll probably take longer breaks than that in the future.
Yeah.
But we're trying to make sure we're able to get a season's worth of episodes in before the holiday break.
Mm-hmm.
So October 7th is going to be when we pick things up again. And fingers crossed, we will actually have caught up and have all of this planning done, and it'll be, I kind of want to enhance the live experience a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting and exciting. So
yeah.
Anyways, that is the announcement.
Okay.
But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the show. We're going to keep this kind of short and sweet, but it's a topic that came from the idea came from what we were talking about last week. But I'll go ahead and do that vamp in the show itself. And then Cody, I'm going to bring in, I think for the after show, I'll bring in the stuff about the monitoring and the cost and stuff like that. All right, here we go.
All right.
Welcome to In the Boat with Ben and Rachel. I'm Ben.
And I'm Rachel.
And this show exists to be an encouragement for creators who are trying to balance their passion and their life. We are parents of 6 kids. We both work from home full time, doing creative work, building things, making things, and just trying to keep it all balanced. And we hope that these conversations are an encouragement to you, and that as you listen to them, you feel less alone on your creator journey. So today we're talking about a topic that the idea for this topic came from what we were talking about in the previous episode, which was how do you know when it's time to end a project? And this question seems similar on the surface, but it's actually quite different. And it's, how do you know when a project has failed? I think that's a really interesting question, and so I thought it would be fun to make that the topic of our discussion today. Failure is not a fun word. It's not. It's something that I think, depending on the circles of people you spend your time with, depending on the environment in which you grew up, I'm not gonna. Sorry, I was about to call it the F word. Failure.
Right. Oh.
But that word failure can hold a lot of negative connotation. And then in some circles and in some discussions, failure's just a part of the process. It's like, oh yeah, I know that some number of things that I do some percentage of projects that I start or things that I try or whatever are going to fail, and that's actually part of the equation. It's like before I can find the thing that actually works, I might have to go through 7 other things that fail and learn
Mm.
from those. So I kind of I wanted to start off by framing failure in a little bit more of a positive light and talking about it as like it is really part of the process. Um, because if you think about it that way, you're less likely to encounter failure and have a negative reaction to that, where maybe it like throws you completely off and you just stop trying things altogether for a season. I know that's been my experience before. When I thought of failure differently, it would hit me a little bit harder, and it would make it difficult for me to kind of get back on the horse. So now I feel like I'm starting to feel, I'm not all the way there, but I'm starting to feel a little bit more like, okay, failure is really just like a part of the process.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your relationship to failure?
Well, I actually believe that the word fail and the word failure depends on a person. So my definition of when a project fails, which I will say that I don't ever believe that any of my projects fail, that sometimes they might have to be put aside for a while and then, taken back out and revised or, you know, rewritten in a way that looks completely different than what it did before. So, but
Can
that's
I can I kind of throw a wrench into that just a little bit, because I think I um I hear what you're saying about like your written projects and stuff like
mm,
that, um but I'm also curious to hear your thoughts about other types of projects
yeah.
like marketing efforts, um having a YouTube channel and doing like weekly videos,
Yeah.
like anything like that. So anything from your actual creative projects to,
No, I know. I
yeah,
That's why I'm saying I think it
sorry.
depends on the person and the thing that you're trying to do.
Okay.
But for me, like the when you're talking about the marketing efforts and seeing that as a project, um, it's still it still varies person to person. So one of the or I guess some of the criteria that I use whenever I'm considering, is this working or is it not? The biggest one is probably time and where my time is going and whether that is resulting in the efforts that I want or in the results that I want. And obviously those results are going to be different. So if I'm doing a project on YouTube, maybe my results are I want to get so many followers, or maybe my results are I want this to turn into this many books sold, And if I'm doing that consistently and it's not producing the results that I want, then I see that as a fail and I need to either shift in what I'm actually sharing on YouTube, or abandoning it completely if I'm not really sure where to go. Because for me, being a very time oriented person, time is a big deal to me. So if I'm sinking time into something that's not giving me the results that I want, I don't necessarily call it a failure, but I call it like, this is not worth my time. So I either set it aside for now, maybe I never go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I did with social media. For 2 years, I consistently, posted, shared my work and all of those things. And it just wasn't resulting in what I had wanted it to result in, which was, getting new readers and that kind of thing. And so I was like, if I'm spending, I think I was spending like 5 hours a week creating that content, that's 5 hours that I could work on stories. I can get like thousands of words in that many, in that many
Mm-hmm.
hours. And so for me, it comes down to a time thing versus like, what are the results that I'm getting?
Well, yeah, it's is this does this continue to be worth my time? And so if if you're using the word failure, but it sounds like you're kind of you're defining it a little bit differently, but it really has to do with um, something is a project or an effort is failing you when it no longer is worth your time.
Mm-hmm.
And
The time that you're consistently putting into it.
yeah, and then you make that calculation kind of on a case by case basis of whether or not something
it really is, because I was about to say, like, it's totally different for creative projects. Like, if I'm doing straight up marketing stuff, I assess it very differently than how I do like my creative projects, because I feel like even if a creative project feels like a slog getting through, it's still serving me in some way, because I'm learning things, I'm, you know, I'm gaining new skills, I'm practicing, which is a big deal in creative work, consistent practice, even if like nobody ever sees that work, you know? So I approach them very differently, because one is creativity and the other is, I mean, marketing is creativity, of course. But for me, it's like the necessary, I'm going to say the necessary evil to my creative work. You know what I mean? So when we're talking about when do you know a project has failed, I really think that it has to be parameters that you put yourself around that, and what is your definition of a project failing, you know?
Yeah, and in that sense, the idea of failure can be subjective. I think there are definitely situations where there's a specific result or goal that everyone is going after. Um, like if you're doing a client project and they have specific things they're hoping to get out of that project, and you in your execution of making that thing or whatever, it fails to meet their expectation.
Right.
Or
But we can't ever really know what's going to happen with that, right? Like we can't.
well, okay, so yeah, you can't guarantee the results of the implementation, but that's a whole other conversation. Like when it comes to client work, that's a whole other conversation about setting expectations
Yeah.
and building all of that in up front. Um, I think in a perfect world, if you're doing everything right with client work, and this all the way down to like being able to recognize the types of clients who cannot get on board and share and have a set of shared expectations, and knowing what those red flags are and refusing to work with those people, like being very you know um, picky about it in the beginning. I think that's possible.
Yeah.
The way that most people operate in client relationships, that's not the case. I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take it out of the ambiguity and put it into something that's a little bit more concrete. So I'm thinking about, um, like my YouTube channel, for example. I made a decision I was going to post a video a week for 2 years. And I could measure success as I did exactly what I said I was going to do. I published one video a week for 2 years. But a valid question is like, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of effort. That's a lot of energy. What am I expecting to get out of that besides having this, library of videos? Well, I'd like to get more subscribers. I'd like to get more views. I'd like to get my channel to a place where, like, um, there are monetization goals in YouTube, and if you reach a certain number of subscribers and views, not necessarily because I want to monetize my channel, but that's kind of one of those legitimacy benchmarks. You hear me as I'm trying to describe this, wrestling a little bit with the concrete, because I think intuitively I'm like, if I think of something specific that I want to get out of this and I don't reach it, or I don't see progress being made toward that, I'm going to think of my efforts as a waste of time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to keep me from showing up. And you know, I know that I know that being consistent over time is a big piece of the puzzle when it comes to growing an audience and improving in your skill. Like it's got a lot of benefits, and so I know I'm going to reap some benefits. It's not
Mm-hmm.
going to, you know, like I'm not going to get to the end of the 2 year period and nothing will have happened. But I'm not sure I want to measure something specific. So hypothetically, if I did, um, that would be me. That would really be me making a decision about, okay, what is an objective measure
Mm-hmm.
that means success or failure to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the one defining that.
Right. That's what I feel like it's a self-defined thing because my goal with any one book is not necessarily to have billions of readers, but it's more to reach the right readers. You know what I mean? So somebody else could see a book that only sells so many copies as like, wow, that wasn't really worth your time. But to me, it was completely worth my time because I reached the right people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I mean, we all have different measures of what success and failure is. And I believe that it's a good, um, gosh, what was I going to say? A good exercise, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
to look at that every project. You know, what is success to me in this project, and what is failure to me in this project. I think for the long term things, so you know, with your YouTube channel and with my social media stuff, I think it's beneficial to have a timeline for that. So not to say this is going to go on forever, but like you did with the YouTube channel, you know, I'm going to post this for a year and see
It
if I
was
can.
2 years.
Oh, it was 2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what my social media thing was. And I remember getting to the end of the first year and being like, wow, this is just really feels like it's going nowhere. But I told myself I'm just going to put in one more year of it, you know. And it seems like a year is such a long time, but it goes by so fast. So,
Yeah, in some ways it is a really long time. And I would say I think you touched on something really important there, because the the folks we're talking to, they're they're working on, like maybe they have an idea for a product. Um and so there's in their mind some idea of what a successful launch of that product would look like, um, and what a failed launch of that product might look like. And the question that we're trying to answer is, okay, so when you launch that product and you know, like you have your first initial 24 to 48 hours of like telling people about it, you've done marketing and stuff like that. Um, is there a point? What are the signals that tell you you should not keep spending your energy and your effort marketing this because it's not hitting? Like people aren't snatching it up.
yeah.
And I think other, you know, like you could take other things like a specific marketing effort, and it could be about, like, you know, you're putting all of this time into making videos for your YouTube channel, and you're not getting more views and you're not getting more subscribers despite going through and doing all of the things you've learned are the right things to do. It's just not happening, you know. um
I want to say something real quick here, though.
yeah.
So, the way that I think about it is in creating a project or even, you know, the consistent social media posting, that stuff already exists. So, what is so wrong with sharing a product that you created 3 years ago now in a market that might be more receptive? And this is what we have to think about when I'm taking manuscripts out on submission and trying to get a publisher to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
The market changes all the time.
Yeah.
And there is no guarantee that the things that we create today will hit their mark with the audience today. And there's no guarantee that the things we create today won't hit with an audience 5 years from now, you know? So if we already have those products in place and we already have, I mean, I could go back and share some things from my, like, completely redo my social media thing with that content already created. It wouldn't take me any time. And maybe it would have a different result today than it did, you know, what was it, 3 years ago?
Yeah. Well, let me share this, because I think I'm curious to hear what your response to this would be. I made a product, and granted, I had a little bit of trouble like being clear about what it was, but essentially it's an online course, a mini, like a short online course that teaches people how to, because a lot of people were doing like Zoom calls and I feel like I'm already answering my question as I think about it, because I'm like talking it through.
Yeah.
At the time though, this was like, you know, middle of the pandemic. Zoom had like people flocked to this service and were using it for all kinds of different things. And my thought was, you know, like people are making content right now and they don't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, if they turn on a camera and they get on a microphone and have a conversation with somebody, they're just a few steps away from having plenty of content that they could share to grow their audience. And so I created this product to teach people how to take their recordings, edit them, and turn them into short form content using the software that I included in the thing was Descript, which makes it super easy. And it also had like a camera setup and all of this stuff. And at the time I thought, this is a slam dunk. It's not going to be like, I don't have a huge audience, so it's not going to be a huge hit. And I sold some units, but it was way less than I was hoping I would get from it.
Well, there's where you got, it's the hoping and the expectations.
Okay. But now, and that's kind of like where I am today. It's like my best shot at getting people involved and excited about this is when I launch it.
Is it though?
It's because I know myself, and I'm like, I'm not gonna keep going back and like, unless there's a community around it, I'm not gonna keep going back and like adding or changing things or whatever. And then I'm like, well, and that moment is kind of past. The people are not really locking down anymore.
I mean, people are still using Zoom.
Yeah, people are still using Zoom. But there's still a lot of live video content. I just did an AMA session.
I don't know what that is.
Ask Me Anything.
Oh.
It's just a Q&A session. I just did a Q&A session, not on Zoom, but on some other platform that does video calls and has a chat and stuff like that. And it was a 30-minute thing, but I know like if I combed through that interview, I could pick out probably like 3 or 4 different places that I could turn into a piece of content that I could share on my platform, or that they could share on their platform. You know, I think it's still relevant. I know it's still relevant. It would just require me packaging it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So maybe I can't say that that's failed. Maybe really what it is it didn't. If I really look back at how I launched it, I know that it wasn't packaged really well. It was confusing.
Yeah.
I think people weren't really sure what it was. I didn't spend a lot of time leading up to it, building up a buzz about it, building up that, excitement. And so I basically launched it to crickets and still got some results.
Yeah.
So
Well, and as far as personalities are concerned too, you tend to be a personality where you get super excited about new ideas and you'll share about those things and then just kind of abandon. Like you launch this project and it almost feels like it's an abandoned idea now because you haven't like consistently talked about it. You know what I mean?
mhm.
But I think for me, my personality is more of a long haul type person where all like if I launched a book and it didn't do as well as I wanted it to, there's still time. There's still time in the future. It's true that people, they're really excited when the book first comes out, but that doesn't mean that you can't share it a year later, on the 1 year anniversary. Like 1 year ago, I created this thing and here it is again. And.
It really sounds like your philosophy is there's no such thing as failure.
I know. It's weird, right? Because I'm a pessimist. But I see even when things don't go according to the way that I want them to, I always feel like it's a learning experience for
Well,
me.
and that really comes back to the mindset thing, because if you think about it as like this means something about whether or not I'm even qualified to do
Mhm.
this, like this says something about who I am as a person. Like you can take failure, or the idea of failure, very personally.
Mhm. Well, and if
Um,
if I took every publisher's rejection of one of my manuscripts as failure, I would have stopped a long time ago. But I think at a certain point you just have to it's the hope for me, I guess. There's like this eternal hope that something is going to happen and something good is going to happen. A publisher is going to pick up this manuscript. It's going to, one of my books someday is going to sell a lot of copies and be turned into a movie. It's like this eternal
yeah,
hope that happens that I feel like creative people need in their lives to keep going, because creative work is it's really hard and it's very subjective. And if you don't believe in your abilities and in the hope that there is something good coming in your future, I feel like nobody would do it. It's such a difficult emotional roller coaster,
yeah.
because there are so many experts on creative work, even though people don't, everybody has an opinion about a movie, even though people don't produce movies. Everybody has an opinion about an art piece, even though they couldn't create something like that. It's like, I don't think there's anything as hard as creative work sometimes, except maybe having babies. Just kidding.
I mean, I would agree with you.
What are
I
you
want to
doing?
look something up, because I think this is kind of an interesting story. Um, I think his name is pronounced Tommy Wiseau. He is an actor and a filmmaker, and he's most well known for a movie called The Room, which he wrote.
Is that a scary movie?
No,
Oh, okay.
it's not.
Maybe I haven't heard of this one.
I actually haven't watched it. Um, so he wrote it, directed it, starred in it, um, and then I can't remember if I don't think it got like a national theatrical release. I think maybe he just did some local, maybe did a film festival. And forgive me if I don't know what I'm talking about, but all that to say, like it was a low budget, it wasn't a Hollywood film. It was like he just decided to do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And since releasing it, it has gotten international recognition. They've made a biographical movie about it,
Wow.
about the making of this movie, because it's terrible.
Oh.
Okay, but listen, Tommy travels around and he does events and like makes appearances. They'll do screenings of his movies, for people who show up to watch it because it's terrible, and he'll show up and like people
Wow.
are super excited to see him.
So there's an audience for everything. See?
Well, and it's not, I don't,
No.
that's another thing, but what's really interesting to me about that whole scenario is I think as a creator, like I would feel so personally like hurt
Yeah.
by the idea that
Oh my gosh.
people are treating my work like a joke.
Yeah.
Um, See, I didn't get enough sleep and I'm starting to feel emotional. This is something that I think is interesting. I think Tommy recognized that what he originally set out to do and what actually happened ended up being the same thing.
So reaching people.
That
Yeah.
that he reached people, he brought people together, and that it meant something to people when they watched his movie together. It meant something different than what he intended,
Yeah.
but it's still something that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And so he could define failure and success in one way and be devastated by that, or he could define it in another way, and he gets to be a part of something that people share and enjoy together, which, like,
And
it's so weird.
yeah, and really, like, what do people know about what's terrible and what's good?
Mm-hmm.
It's so subjective. So, yeah, I feel like that's something that creative work has a lot of possibility for, is people making judgments on it and it not turning out the way that we intended it to, So, and that's a scary thing. It's a scary thing to put something out there that we've put our heart and soul into, and for it not to be received in the way that we want it to be received,
Yeah.
But I guess, so I will say too, I recently finished Simu Liu's memoir. I think it's called Real Life Superhero, and he's very much like of the same opinion that I am, and so I'm like,
oh yeah,
I'm
you're
hyped
kinda,
up on this, like,
yeah.
It's a very good memoir too. He's a great writer, great actor, great writer. It's like a quadruple threat. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, and I think that hope is so important. And I think what I'm experiencing personally is I'm starting to be able to temper my hope, not with this pessimism or skepticism, but more of a realism,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of a curiosity. It's like I find myself asking the question more often, what can I learn from this?
Mm-hmm.
I did that recently. I just had this idea that somebody, creator I follow, had an idea for a project and launched it the same day. Ended up getting $4,000 in sales.
Yeah.
And this person has 10 times the number of followers on Twitter that I do. And so the kind of wild idea I had was, what if I, launched it to my 1,600 followers on Twitter? And what if I made 1/10 of what he made? So instead of making 4,000, I'll see if I can make 400. And I did it. I made a product. I came up with my version of
Mm-hmm.
that idea for my specific audience, and I have not sold one unit. But I learned, like, immediately I started getting excited because I saw all of in doing that, going through that exercise, I saw a lot of things that weren't apparent to me before, and that was kind of exciting. So like,
Mm-hmm.
on the one hand, if I was defining it by, like, did I sell a tenth of the, did I make a tenth of the amount of money this other creator did in a day? No, I didn't. Okay, failure on that account. But I did create a product. it made me sit down and like define some things that I hadn't defined before. It made me flex that muscle of like actually building something, thinking about what my audience is looking for, trying to speak their language and put it in words that would resonate with them and their struggles. Like all of these great things came from it. And then like also thinking through why didn't I sell any? Like what were some of the other ingredients? Because I was only thinking about it in terms of the size of my audience, but that's far from the only factor. There's, there's authority, there's influence, there's the quality of the, and when I say the quality of the people in your audience, everybody in my audience, they're all lovely people.
Yeah.
But I mean quality in terms of like, are they following me and looking to me as someone who has answers or solutions to their problems?
Yeah.
So, anyways, a lot of great things came from that. And I feel like that instinct, so having that hope, but also the curiosity and kind of the realism of saying, things are probably not going to go the way that I hope for them to go. But I know that there are going to be lessons I can learn. And if I stay curious and I look for those things, I'll be able to see them and I'll be able to grow.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
But also too, we may have an idea of how much money we want to make off this one project. Because I think the question came to us when we were talking about how do you know when it's time to end a project. And the ending and the failure thing feels similar to me. So I think sometimes whenever we don't make as much money on something that we've put out into the world or something that we're doing on a consistent basis, it can feel like a failure. And we really do need to evaluate whether our time spent doing that is worth it in the end. I do also feel like we can't always predict what will happen. If I had stayed with the social media stuff for another year, everything would have exploded, but I wasn't willing to put that time in because I wanted to shift and do other things. And so I think having that ability to pivot is really important too.
Yeah.
But as far as like defining something that you're doing either as a creative project or something consistently, defining whether or not it's failed, I think it really does come down to, did I learn anything? Did my results get something unexpected that was good? Like maybe I didn't sell as many copies, but there was a person who wrote me and said, thank you for this, it was life-saving, or something along, something along those lines. And I think we just have to evaluate those things for ourselves, whether or not we continue putting time into that or not. To date, I haven't made as much money off of my writing as I want to, but I think in the future, I have that hope for the future that I will.
Yeah, there will be that one book.
Yeah.
And then like a rising tide
lifts all ships.
Is that how it goes?
Something like that. Yeah.
Anyways,
it's
what
more
I'm trying
for
to say.
People, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, the metaphor works though.
Yeah.
In this case, you have one book go crazy,
but,
and then you've got all of this whole library of other books that people can discover.
But that's the thing too, is some people might have gotten to this point and been like, yeah, it's just not worth my time. But for me, this is, I feel very strongly that it's what I was made to do, and so that keeps, it doesn't feel like a failure in any way. It feels like just around the corner there's something big coming.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, may you always keep that level of hope and optimism.
Yeah.
But that was really well said. I like that. I think that's a good place to end it.
I think it's really funny, just real quick, that I tend to be like the optimist about this stuff, and you are kind of the, like, not really a pessimist, but you have more of a, because that's normally not what our personalities are like.
No. Yeah, it is interesting. I'll have to figure that out sometime. Well, that's I I really enjoyed talking about this topic. I'm not sure we did a good job of like answering the specific question, but I feel like through the course of the conversation, at least for me, it really kind of shifts the way I think about failure, the idea of failure, um, in a positive way, in a way that's going to be more useful to me.
Well, and really, if you're not getting the results that you want and you feel miserable doing it, stop. You know,
There you go. I mean,
close up shop.
that's the quick answer.
Yeah, I think sometimes we need permission to stop. You know,
Yeah,
so
unless you're having a baby.
wow.
I don't know. Am I allowed to say that?
No.
Never mind. I'll edit that out.
Okay.
Sorry. I was trying to do the callback thing because you said it,
Yeah,
and I was like, it's because I didn't get enough sleep.
it is. You're not making the correct threads.
All right. Well, thank y'all so much for listening. And if you want to check out the show online, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I need a thing. This is a
gosh.
thing we're
This
gonna
is-
do during the break. Like I'm
Yep.
gonna write all these
We're
scripts.
gonna come back so professional. Y'all
So
just wait.
professional. If you want a way to keep up with the show, you can go to intheboatpodcast.com. You can also follow us anywhere you can listen to podcasts, especially after I edit all these episodes in the queue. Really appreciate y'all sticking around and keeping up with us. It's been a little bit of a rocky start, but I'm having such a great time having these conversations, and I'm super excited about what the future holds. So I appreciate all of you who are on this ride with us.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to find Rachel, where can they go, Rachel?
RachelTolson.com, and then I'm at Rachel Tolson on all the things.
Yep. I'm going to send you to bentolson.podia.com.
PODIA.
Yep. I am this close. I launched that one product. It's a one-on-one coaching session for anyone who's looking for honest feedback on their YouTube channel. It is a YouTube channel audit, and I will sit down and look at your channel. I'll look at your analytics with you. I'll ask you some questions, and then after our call, I'll record a video sharing my feedback, some things that you could tweak, some things that you can stop doing and maybe not worry about for now because it's not the right time, some things that you're doing well that you should continue, focusing on and growing in. And then I'll also send you a PDF document with any resources we discussed and kind of a summary of the things that we talked about. So that is on my site at bentolson.podia.com. It's called Grow Fast, I think. Grow Fast YouTube Audit.
All right.
Yeah. So that's what I'm plugging.
There you go.
Thanks again for listening, and we will see you, or we'll talk to you in the next season.
October 7th.
Yep. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Except it's not goodbye yet because we do have a quick after show.
Yeah.
I wanted to read this comment that Cody left about relating to, we were talking about before the show, the idea of like things like customer service and why they're so terrible. So Cody, I was talking about this idea of like proactive monitoring. So like having a monitoring system in a piece of exercise equipment, and it would send diagnostics back to the central hub, and they would like call you if they noticed something was wrong and offer to send a service person out to you to fix it. Because the experience of something breaking and then having to get on the phone with support, having to wait for someone, like it's so much inconvenience, time and inconvenience. And in some cases, I think for some people, it's so much that it's not worth it. It's like you gave me the phone number to call for Nordic Track.
Oh, you said the company.
I did. I don't care.
I didn't share last week, but
You gave me their phone number 4 days ago or 3 days ago.
And you've been procrastinating.
I've been procrastinating. I've been too busy. Because what you said was it was an hour on the phone with them.
I did have
like, who has an hour just to be on the phone? This isn't like if you spend an hour, it's magically fixed and you can use it again. No, that's just to get the process started. It just
anyway.
Anyway, sorry. Cody's
Ben didn't get enough sleep last night, so he's a little grumpy.
I'm not grumpy. I'm just kidding. Cody says proactive monitoring costs more than break/fix. I work in IT and we have a middleman vendor between ISPs and our clients that monitor their connections. They proactively open tickets when things go down and get techs on site, but it's pricey, not viable for home connections. So he's talking about in IT proactively fixing problems for, sounds like, commercial customers before they happen. Commercial customers are a big source of income. So like it kind of, I guess in that case, and they stand to lose a lot. Like if something goes down, if your computer system goes down, that's
you're like
lots of lost revenue. Like you start to lose revenue right away. And if I run a business that makes a lot of money and I'm paying a lot of money to make sure that these things work properly, and I have some amount of downtime, like I'm already thinking about, okay, which company can I work with that's not going to cost me the $500,000 that I lost over the past 2 hours of being down.
Yeah.
Like those are the kind of calculations. So I get it.
Yeah.
We're just like, we're a drop in the bucket, like a tiny drop in the bucket of their income. Like I'm sure they contract out to gym, or like they have relationships with gyms and hotels, maybe like places where they just like, they have tons of equipment and maybe they do have that stuff. Maybe they don't have the monitoring, like maybe it's not that sophisticated, but they send someone every month to like just check on things and make sure everything's up and running.
Yeah, because gyms aren't going to want a machine to break and somebody gets hurt on it. So
yeah, the liability. It probably costs them less to run support the way they do and run the risk of people suing them because of a equipment malfunction than it would for them to have a more proactive type of customer service.
You know, I will say this, and it might get me in trouble from like years ago, but I used to, like when we would have problems that would happen, I would just nonchalantly drop to the person on the phone, I work as a journalist, and
bad press.
Isn't that awful? I totally used it.
Yeah. What are the ethics of that?
Oh, it's unethical. You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
It was only like one or two. It was only like one or two times.
Like
when I was like
as a
really
journalist.
fed up. Yeah.
She never did it though.
Right. No, I never wrote terrible stories about people, but
no.
But it was just like, that threat. It was.
And she never worked as a journalist again.
That's when I was fired. I'm just kidding. I did not get fired.
Yeah.
I loved my journalist job.
I feel like I have a YouTube channel. I have a live show, and I'm going to tell my listeners.
I mean, if you had a YouTube channel that was based on outrage culture, you could totally use that.
No, that's a real thing though. Like if I had if I had a tech or like exercise
Yeah.
equipment review channel or something like that,
That would be a
I bet I would
big
get
deal.
great customer
Mhm.
service from those people.
Yeah.
Um,
I should just start a review channel on
yeah,
everything.
this it all just comes back to, because it's not company practice, because that's just how companies operate.
Mhm.
It's human beings. It's lots of little decisions that add up to what we experience.
Yeah.
And it's pretty predictable, like when you think about actual human nature. And anyways,
Yeah. All right.
I'm
That
not
was long.
I shouldn't be surprised. I shouldn't
Mhm.
be surprised.
Nope.
But that doesn't mean I can't complain about it. All right.
We live in a world of complainers. That's the chapter title of one of my
Oh yeah, yeah.
books.
All right. Well, thanks again for tuning in for that last part. Um, I mean, yeah,